Before we start, I wanted to acknowledge the traditional owners of the many lands on which we are joining from today, the rich culture, and we pay respect to the elders past, present, and emerging. We acknowledge Aboriginal people as Australia's first peoples and the traditional owners and custodians of the lands on which we work and live. Thanks for joining us today for this Circular Economy Living Lab grant writing session. We have a bit of content to go through, as we said, so I'm going to start. I will be presenting, so I'm not going to see your faces, but I will imagine you nodding and being very interested in everything that I'm saying. We are running this session until 1 p.m. We will cover a lot of content. We are looking at the Circular Economy Living Lab, the general purpose of the Living Lab, the key dates of the initiative, what to expect if you are part of these initiative. We're then going to look into the grant eligibility, all the submission, the assessment process, all these useful information, a little bit more in depth. Then we will have one part of the session dedicated to the key circular business models, the type of projects and ideas that can be funded through the grant. So you get an understanding of what type of projects might be most suitable for these application of the Living Lab. We will then run through the actual application form through SmartyGrants, the platform that you will use to submit your application. Little bit of housekeeping before we kick off. And while you get your coffee and make yourself comfortable, you can ask questions anytime via Q&A function. Adam will be the moderator for the day, so he will reply to the best of his knowledge straight and live on the Q&A section. We will also stop at some points during the presentation to share some questions that might be worth being discussed instead of being quickly replied via Q&A. If we are not able to answer some of your questions, that might happen. We will just take notice and we'll get back to you and reply on a later date. Just to let you know, we cannot give direct feedback on your project, given the fact that the grant is a competitive grant, but we can help you with anything from eligibility, help you navigate the process, inform you on timelines and what to expect. Also, as mentioned before, the session is recorded and all the resources that I will use and show you today will be shared with you after the session. Finally, the chat will not be available after the meeting, so make sure that you take notes, but we will take notes of all of your questions. The most popular will be published in a frequently asked question section on Casey Conversation, and those will also be sent as part of the post-event resources. So I think we can start today by introducing the Circular Economy Living Lab. We will go a little bit more into detail regarding circular economy and the type of projects that we're looking at. However, if you're here today, there's a good chance that you're already familiar with the concept and your project is already addressing circular economy to some extent. But the Living Lab is a new platform for the City of Casey, so we thought it would be good to give a quick introduction to let you know why we decided to have a Living Lab and what it is and why it's really important for us to find collaborators like you to innovate in the City of Casey. So because you're going to hear a lot of me for the next hour and a half, I thought maybe this short introduction could be showed through a video so you can see a bit of Adam's face as well. Let me know, Adam, if it's all good with the audio.
Casey's Living Labs is in response to communities' expectation of solving more complex problems than ever before, a lot faster, and with more constraints on budgets. So a Living Lab enables us to collaborate with community, work with community to understand what issues are highest priority for them, but also enables us to engage with potential solution partners with community and test those potential solutions before we go and expend large sums of money in scaling up solutions across the city of Casey. A living lab is a physical or a virtual environment where we can test early stage concept solutions for complex problems. It enables us an environment to engage with community, to solicit their response of a particular potential solution or solutions across the city of Casey. And they will vary for different living labs as we start to unravel particular problems and implement solutions that might be feasible. Partnerships are crucial to the success of a living lab. Without partners, we wouldn't be able to solve some of these problems on our own. Some of these problems are extremely complex. Some of the root causes are insidious. So to try and explore and gain more information about these problems, we need to iterate, and our partners who have expertise, technology, knowledge, experience in particular fields enables us to tap into that in concert with community and our infrastructure to identify what solutions might be in the medium to long term.
Fantastic. Thank you, Virtual Adam. This is mostly for us to tell you that the Living Lab is more than a grant. It's a process, it's a platform, it's an initiative that we want to run over and over again. So this specific Living Lab will be focused on circular economy and 3 areas that we'll get into in 1 second. But we will repeat Living Lab over the next years, and the themes and the focus of the grants and the process might be very different because we will address very different problems that are all high priority for our community, and all address innovation and help us drive innovation in the city of Casey. So the key areas of this specific Living Lab that is going to run from now until mid next year is around circular economy with 2 main sectors that we identified as high priority for the city of Casey in the transition towards a circular economy. And these sectors are the built environment and food. Specifically, you will see that there are 3 key challenges that you can address through your project. And these are fully explained on the challenge brief document that Adam might have shared on the chat or will share on the chat, and you'll be able to access through this document. It's also published on Casey Conversation. But the key point is there are 3 areas that we would like your projects to address. One is, do you have a solution that can address the amount of waste created in the construction and demolition sector, and this can be at any stage of the supply chain? Do you have any solutions that can help us make the most of the existing built environment that we have? And we're talking about council-owned assets, but also private assets, private buildings that are not used in the most effective way. And thirdly, we're talking about food. Specifically, do you have a solution that can help us address food waste and reduce food waste, particularly around organic? So these are the main key areas. We will get a little bit more into detail around what type of projects and solutions might be most suitable for the Living Lab. But for now, let's have a quick look at what are the key dates of these 6 months program. We are now in the grant application phase. As you know, the applications are open until the 31st of August, so you still have another 3 weeks to write and submit your projects. We would then move to the project selection phase. These would run in the month of September. The first 3 weeks will be around assessing the eligibility as well as the merit of the different applications that will come through, and then create a short list of applicants. These will be assessed through an internal panel in the City of Casey, in the City Council. And we will then have a selection of a few projects that will join us for pitch night. The idea of pitch night is to have our finalists of the Living Lab present their idea, their projects to community, so we can get the community feedback as to how desirable these solutions are. And these might be a useful opportunity as well for you to have some users looking at your project and give you some direct feedback. The community feedback will be taken into account once we move to the following phase. That is the choice of successful candidates. Once these are selected, they will be informed. There will be a few steps of due diligence, and the funding agreement process will start. These can take more or less time based on the project and how complex your applications are. The date of the project, the starting date of the project will also be discussed at this stage, because it might be different based on the project that you're submitting. So we're looking around the end of October and November, month of November, to kick off your projects, to kick off the trials. The trials will then run until April, May next year. Where the end of the trial will be celebrated with some community events. We will present the results of the trials, and we will also move to the project acquittal and reporting. This is the broad overview. Let's look into who can apply for the Living Lab. As you've seen from the grant guidelines, it's pretty broad. So as long as you're a legal entity, and if you are a for-profit business or startups, you are eligible. Initially, we had a clause around startups being registered for at least 2 years. That was removed. So if you are a startup and you are 6 months old, you are now eligible to apply for the Living Lab. Secondly, we have non-profit organizations, social enterprises, cooperatives, community groups. So anyone of these organizations, as long as they are legal entities, can apply, as well as research institutions, universities, and schools. We strongly encourage you to create some partnerships. This is more than a grant where you create a project, deliver the project, and submit a report. We really want to create partnerships. We want to activate as much as possible your projects in the community, in the City of Casey. So being able to create those partnerships at an application phase is strongly encouraged, and will help make your application more desirable. If you are able to involve some local businesses, that will be also beneficial. Although any business, any legal entity in Australia is eligible to apply, the purpose of the Living Lab is also to engage local businesses and support the local economy. So if you're a business from the City of Casey or are able to develop a collaboration with a Casey-based business, that would also be strongly encouraged. What can we do for you? How can we support you? We can give you different types of support, both financial and in kind. And this is up to you to decide based on the complexity of your project. We are looking at a first range of support up to $20,000. If you are requiring this type of financial contribution, you will not need to contribute yourself. You will be funded entirely through the grant. If you are asking funding between $20,000 and $1 and $50,000, which is the maximum financial contribution allowed, in this case, you will need to match the funding 1-to-1. And this means that if you're asking for 50,000, you will need to contribute $50,000. However, only 50%, so only $25,000 would need to be a financial cash contribution. The other half can be an in-kind contribution. You are probably not able to click on these in-kind contribution link, but you will have more information about what is an in-kind contribution and how to put that into your budgeting. Just to say it in a quick way, in-kind means any voluntary labor, any assets that you're contributing, any goods that you're donating, any services that take place in a pro bono manner in your project. So you will need to calculate the value of that in-kind contribution, but this is just to say the one-to-one match co-funding allows you to contribute both with cash and in kind. And talking about in-kind support, you can also ask us from in-kind support. And I think it's very important for you to consider this because the City of Casey owns a number of facilities, particularly when we talk about challenges that focus on the built environment. It's important to take into account the fact that you might have a project, but having access to a council-owned building and be able to test your idea and run your projects in one of these facilities, it's a great benefit for your project. So just to let you know, regardless of how much financial contribution you require, you can always add an in-kind contribution, for example, access to council-owned buildings and facilities. And because this grant is, because a Living Lab is more than a grant, it's a partnership, it's a collaboration, it's a way to co-create, co-design. Adam and I and the rest of the team of the Smart City and Innovation, we will support you along the way. We will not approve your grant and see you in 6 months. We will be part of the process. We will organize events to help you engage with the community and showcase what you're doing during the trial. We will give support along the way. So this is not something that you will need to require in your grant. It will be given to you regardless of the type of project or level of financial request that you will put through. Looking into the projects, we will go a bit more in detail, but just to let you know what we're looking for, it's pilot projects, but also if you're a smaller organization or a community group, you can also have some events and some community activation funded through the Living Lab. When you are addressing, for example, behavioral change in food, that can help change the community behavior through these activations. So as long as you address one or more of the 3 challenges to your project, there's a broad range of projects that can be funded. As long as they have a level of innovation, they address the challenges, they leverage the circular economy principles, and they are able to kick off within a month from the grant agreement sign off and produce outcomes throughout a 6-month trial. So we need to be able to start the project around October, November and see some results and be able to complete that cycle of your trial in 6 months. So before we move into the resources for your project and discuss a little bit more in detail, what are some type of projects that can be funded, I wanted to check in with you, Adam, and see if there are any questions that you wanted to discuss at this stage, or if the Q&A has been busy and you have already done everything yourself.
No, all good, Nikki. No questions that have come through yet. So we just welcome. I've just been putting, if people haven't seen, I've just started opening up a few threads of discussion, the link through to the guidelines reference. There'll be some other links that we'll put in relevance to the content that Nikki's delivering. So I see Kartik's got a question, but Kartik, if you could, there is a Q&A. If you have a look at the top of the ribbon there, you'll see a Q&A log. If you could, throw your question in there, that means we can keep the presentation going and I can respond to those questions accordingly. as Nikki mentioned, if there's something that we don't have an answer for today, we'll take those questions on notice and we will respond accordingly. Again, we can't be very specific about applications. We have to speak very generally about what the assessment criteria is, what we're looking for in terms of those types of dimensions, because it will be a selection criteria, a selection group that are independent from us. So remember, it's your application which is really what binds your submission and your yeah. So
yeah, good point.
Okay, thanks, Nikki.
We do our best to answer today, but if not, you are if you have more questions that come to your mind after this session, you're more than welcome to email us at smartcity@kc.vic.gov.au, and we'll get back to you in a day or two. Then looking at the resources that we're going into our second block of information. On that presentation that we'll share with you later, you have the links. However, I think Adam might be able to share that on the chat. I've created this board for you to access with 4 different sections. One, it's called a circular built environment. And the first 2 are more informative around circular economy in the built environment and in the food system. And we wanted to have these mostly because you might be familiar with circular economy. You might need a bit of support in understanding exactly what is the problem that we're trying to address, what is the impact. Yes, Adam?
Oh, Nikki, just a quick one. Just if everyone can just give us a reaction of a thumbs up whether they see the Q&A link or the Q&A button in the Teams meeting. Just want to make sure everyone's aware that that's present. Just with a thumbs up or an acknowledgement, a reaction, if possible.
Yeah, reactions are definitely activated.
No worries. Can everybody see or have access to the Q&A link at the top? And are they seeing the discussions coming through? Just a thumbs up reaction if you can. Oh yeah, we've got a hand up from somebody. So so Simply Save Australia, can you see the discussion?
Or can you type in the Q&A?
Yeah, can you type in the Q&A section? It's up the top. Do you want me to share my screen, Nikki? Maybe that's the way to do it.
I can do it as well.
Okay.
Not sure if I'm seeing you.
Yeah. So you've got that Q&A button up the top there. Can everybody see that Q&A button?
Let me do a quick check just to make sure that we have everything active.
Yeah, don't think people can see it for some reason.
Yeah, Q&A is enable. I might enable the chat as well.
Yeah, yeah.
So I'm enabling the chat in the meeting. So if you want to try and use the chat as well, if any of you go.
So Simply Save Australia, you can't see the Q&A section. Can't see. Okay, thanks, guys. Look, apologies for that. I thought that was a bit weird. So I think, Nikki, what we'll do is to keep it flowing, let's put it into the chat. That's fine. I'll register the questions from there, and we'll continue on. Okay. Apologies to everybody. I thought that was a bit weird. So okay. So any questions, please whack them in the chat, and we'll go from there.
Yep, no worries. So I suppose no question at this stage. I'll just keep moving for now, but again, feel free to use the chat, and we'll try to keep maybe the last 10 minutes as well for bit of a Q&A and summarize everything that we talked about because there's a lot of information. I will move on to the resources, but feel free to pop questions and Adam will get back to you while I just run through these resources that will be available for you after this session. So for both for the built environment and for the food, you will find some useful resources to frame the problem, understand what is the vision for the circular economy in the built environment and in food. And down here, you will also have some toolkits for both themes for you to access and see what are some circular economy business models that can really help you address these problems and frame your solution in a way that is well structured, clear, and addresses circular economy principles. So these are the section 1 and 2. I won't go into detail. This is more for you to just review. You have some videos you would just need to double click and some reports and toolkits that you just need to double click on to access. What I wanted to talk about, though, is a circular economy business models. Why? Because one of the questions on the SmartyGrants on your application form is which circular business models does your solution address? Could be more than one, obviously, but it's good to have just a general understanding of what do we mean, because it might seem more complicated than what it is. So I'm going to run through the type of circular economy business models that you will find on the form to hopefully inspire, hopefully make you understand where your innovation falls into, as well as maybe get some ideas of the type of projects that can be funded through this grant. So we have, these boards have 11 options. So I will go quickly. I won't go in detail through every single resource. This is more for you to look at after this session, but I'll go through very quickly through the main circular economy business models. The first one is the sharing model, and it means any project that can help us to make the most of an existing product or asset. So here we're focusing on the challenge around asset maximization, but it's basically about offering shared use or asset or ownership of a product. What I mean by that, and here you will see some examples, is Space to Co, for example, or Space Connect. These are all apps and platforms that help you give access to people to shared assets. In this case, desks. So that means that an existing underutilized building can potentially become can potentially be accessed through a service that you provide, where you're renting the space, making the most of that space, making increasing the efficiency of the energy that you're using, as well as the space, while providing a great service to your to the community. And these can also be done with products. So anything that you use, such as like car sharing or renting products, that is a solution that aligns with the sharing model. The second one is similar, and it's called product as a service, and it means to replace a product sale with a service. For example, if you are a furniture maker, you can provide furniture as a service. So instead of selling the office fit outs to the companies, you are selling them the furnishing service, meaning that when these furniture are not necessary anymore or need to be moved, you would take them back and you would give the specific company that you're serving different fit outs, and you would take back those products that you're able to reuse for another client. This model often works through subscription. It can you can access these with a variety of services that go from light to printer cartridges. The difference between the first one and the second one is that the first one sees your role, your project more as an enabler, as a platform that enables the sharing of existing goods. The second one is more sees you as more of the producer, someone that turns the sale and the production of a product into the provision of a service. Moving on to the third one, circular economy is also about creating durability, extending the use of products, make products that are made to last, to be repaired, to be resold, to be maintained. These are about extending the value and the high value products and materials for as long as possible. An example of these are trading programs or bespoke and modular design, as we talked about built environment. So what you can do here is create some reusable modular products that can easily be replaced, resold, any interesting design that allow that level of flexibility as well as repairing and maintenance can help us extend the useful life of the products. So the following one is the product life extension, which means to extend the useful life of products and materials via reselling, maintaining, repairing, refurbishing. So for example, these will include any online platform that sells secondhand products, that provide solutions to repair products, selling parts, any repair cafe, any adaptive reuse or solutions for retrofitting and maintaining existing buildings instead of going into demolition and rebuilding. So the difference between durability and product life extension is that in the first case, you need to be a more structured company. You are the one that makes the products and creates that take back program. You need to implement some reverse logistic or have a reverse logistic partner into the picture, into your program. The fourth, for the product life extension, the focus of your project will be more on the repairing. So you are the person that doesn't necessarily provide that new product, but you're the one that takes back, maintains, refurbish, or provides repairing services. And you will see for each section that you have some useful examples, including repair cafes and other great community initiatives that have created some strong business case for these type of models and for the success of these type of projects. Moving on, we're going to create products with recyclable and recycled material. We know that particularly in construction, there's a lot of creation of and replacement of virgin materials, virgin resources with recycled ones. These might not be used yet, but if you have an innovation, a new material or a new product that leverages recyclability, so recycled and recyclable material, these Living Lab might be a good opportunity for you to trial and test this type of innovation. And here you have a couple of examples like tiles made with upcycled textile residues or construction made with reclaimed material. So focusing on the built environment here. The next one is materials efficiency model. And what we're looking here are projects that improve processes so that you can reduce waste in the production of products and services. These includes any design that is made with zero waste criteria, or models such as the made to order, where you produce only once a product has been ordered. And these can be applied to a variety of sectors as well. And it focuses more on the efficiencies to reduce inefficiencies along the supply chain of a specific industry or product production. Moving on to the waste avoidance, here you will include any project that you are submitting that focus on waste avoidance of products and materials in the supply chain. So The difference between the previous one is here you want to include, you will fall into this category if your project has any solution that help monitor waste and increase efficiency along the supply chain, or any collaborative projects that we really encourage you to look into to optimize processes at different levels. So really look at that supply chain and see how you can create synergies, as well as create synergies with local businesses. And these applies very much on food as well. And I definitely suggest you to look at the case of Citizen and Wild Wheat, because the advantage of creating a local circular economy is that you can really tap into that that value chain of the product and the services that we use, and create synergies and a symbiosis with different businesses, organizations that operate in the same area. So the difference between 6 and 7 is that material efficiency focuses on the design and the material. Waste avoidance focuses on analyzing and optimizing the efficiency along the supply chain, and has more opportunities for synergies and collaboration and a broader look at the project and the trial that you will run, particularly if you're able to involve local organizations that collaborate with you. Moving on to resource recovery, this is where you have material recovery processes. So this will be limited to the construction and food industries. Obviously, we won't be able to fund operational costs for the implementation of resource recovery activities. So if you recycle glass, and that's already your business as usual, we will not be able to fund you to continue doing what you have already been doing for years. But we will fund some trials that see maybe a collaboration between resource recovery businesses and other organizations that will use the output material that you have created. So if you are working resource recovery in textile and you're able to produce some tiles that then fit into the recycled content tiles that another organization creates, that's where you have a very effective business model, as well as a very strong application for a resource recovery model in the Living Lab. This includes also resource recovery if you are an organization that does resource recovery in as business as usual, but is testing some new recovery solution in a new area, in a new material area, for example. Then we have regenerate the natural ecosystem. This means any project that focuses on renewable energy, compostable material, highlights replaces toxic substances with non-toxic substances to regenerate the natural ecosystem. So this includes anything. Are you creating a bio-based packaging that replaces plastic? Do you have any renewable energy innovation that we could test? Are you creating some products that have new non-toxic substances where usually toxic substances are used? Any urban agriculture solutions, regenerative farming? So these doesn't only apply to food. These actually applies to potentially more than one of the challenges of the Living Lab. Moving on this side, remember that we're also looking at design and marketing for waste avoidance. We need behavioral change, and we need awareness. We need new ways to influence and foster more sustainable behaviors. So here we can look at some apps, for example, that connect vendors with customers. So at the end of the day, the cafe and the restaurant in the city of Casey that has some food can sell it at a discounted price to the city of Casey citizen while he goes back home in the evening, and that would avoid and prevent food waste. We're also looking at mapping. Are there sustainable and locally made products that can help us create a more resilient and healthy food system that can help us improve food security? So anything that can help create these type type of solution will fall into design and marketing for waste avoidance. And finally, we have circular economy enablers. So remember that you can also ask for small funding to run training initiatives that enable the adoption of circular economy practices, both in business and in the community. So in this last category, that's where all the projects that will focus on training, capability buildings, awareness events will fall. So this is a very broad, very quick, I admit, overview of the type of business models that you will find on that grant form. And I will encourage you to look back at your project and leverage these resources, both the resources around built environment and food, as well as try to really look at your project and look at the benefits of your project through the lens of these different categories that you would then find in the form, because these will help you address the assessment criteria in the best way possible. So I'm going to stop here and ask if there are questions that we wanted to discuss out loud, Adam, or if you are already chatting like crazy, or if you have anything you want to.
No, I am, and you're probably hearing me typing away. I apologise. I should be on mute, but I've just been addressing and replying to those requests. So they're coming through. If after the meeting, we'll review those again. If we think it requires more information or more detailed response, we'll send that out, of course. And I just want to clarify the reason why we just have the chat or a Q&A session, given that there's a lot of content to get through. And depending on how big these sessions are, there could be 5 people, could be 50. This just enables Nikki to deliver the content while we're still going to address those concerns or questions or seeking clarity. So if I miss someone or miss a question, let me know, put your hand up. You'll see on the right-hand side that the chats are going, I'm responding specifically to the chat in the thread. So at least then we can keep track of those answers. If I miss something, please let me know at the end of the session and we can then address it afterwards. So, but
yeah, is there anything that you wanted to, any, I don't know, emerging themes that you wanted to discuss at this stage, Adam?
Not at this stage. I think the key things are, I just want to keep re-emphasising what we've been saying, and that is, look, we understand circular economy is quite a big beast.
Yeah.
We have tried to break it down to those 3 themes to give flexibility within, but also give some focus in the areas that we think we can also help with. So, you know, there are questions around trying to frame up what problems we should be solving. Well, that's not really the role. The role really is to provide a platform of you identifying the areas that you think you can solve and making sure your solution is a really tight fit, or what you want to trial or test as a tight fit. We don't have an expectation at the end of this there'll be some commercial thing that could be spun up. That's not part. We know that some of these could be really early. Some of them could be just testing something for the first time and getting that community feedback. Therefore, they might require further investment of enterprises later, but this could be the initial platform. And that would all be done on a case-by-case basis. This is not a classic, I guess, government tender where we're specifying a particular solution that we're looking for and benchmarking that. You know, we are looking for a bit more of a collaborative and co-creating environment also with community. So I would seriously suggest to everybody, and again, just want to preface, we're not on the selection committee and we can't influence the selection committee. We're here to facilitate, to provide support, to ensure that we can help you put your best application in, the best you can, but we can't guide you to say this is what you should be doing other than those standard principles. So what are those standard principles? Make sure that's a really clear problem within those domains. Make sure that your solution is really clear and articulated. Have a look at, can you collaborate and co-create, even with local business? Those things are really clearly articulated where successful, you know, as part of the successful criteria amongst others. So, you know, that's all I probably want to say at the moment.
Indeed. It's not a matter of solving all the problems. We know that
No.
we're going to solve everything in a 6 months trial. The key would definitely be to be very specific to in your project application. Make sure that whatever you decide, whatever the scope you decide is your project is addressing, is very specific and easy to understand, which is a great segue into our next part of the session, which is all about the grant application. So we had a bit of an introduction to the Living Lab and general eligibility criteria. Again, I encourage you to look at the all the documentation that is provided, that is much more comprehensive than what I gave you today when it comes to assessment criteria and challenge brief. But any questions that you might have after this session, feel free to email us. We then look into the specific of circular economy models. So you start to get an idea of what type of projects might be eligible. You might even be running some circular economy initiatives without knowing that you are circular. So it's a matter of being aware that what you're doing fits into a circular economy framework or a business model, and help explain that in the best way possible. So I'm going to move back to the application page, to the window. Here we go. Oh, I can have it as a double. So moving on to the grant application. Can you see the full screen now, Adam? Yeah, perfect. So it's small, isn't it? Yeah, okay. I tried to have it all. I tried to have you, the chat, Teams, everything, but I failed. So I'm going to put it back in the giant mode. Okay. I'm going to put you back in the giant mode, and that's it.
No worries, Nikki.
So what we're going to look at in this last part of the session before we get into the nitty and gritty of SmartyGrants. Here we go. Better, I suppose. What we're going to do now, it's more around SmartyGrants and the content and the grant application. So first of all, your application will need to come through SmartyGrants. We fit this into a grant format. So if you go on the grant page or Casey Conversation as well, it will take you to a link where you can open SmartyGrants, the platform where you will submit your application. Or you can click directly on this link that you will find on the presentation, and these will take you straight to the form. A few tips about SmartyGrants. Make sure that you save your application along the way. Even better, use a separate Microsoft Word or any other text editing app, and then put that into the form. Just make sure that you save at each page, because especially when you spend a lot of time on one page, the session will expire and your content might be lost. Allow time to write. It doesn't mean that you need to write an extremely lengthy, content-heavy application, but it takes time to write a good application. So make sure that you allow enough time to write, fill out the form, upload any attachments if you need to, and submit before the deadline. Make sure that you fill out all the mandatory fields. They have a red dot, red asterisk. If you don't fill those ones, you won't be able to proceed to the following page of the grant. Make sure that you check the word limit. Some open questions where text is required have a word limit, 200, 300 words. So make sure that you use a word count website and that you keep within the word limit. Remember that the applications close on the 31st of August at 5 p.m. No late application can be accepted, and no application through any other platform that isn't SmartyGrants will be accepted. Once you have submitted your application, you can save and go back to your application as many times as you want. But once you submit that, you won't be able to edit your application. So just make sure that you have enough time to go through these all of these steps, because it takes a little bit of time and attention. Now, some tips for project writing. You have some great ideas. We know that already. We also need to make sure that you write in a way that that makes it shine. So make sure, first of all, that you address the problem. If you decide, as we said before, we're looking at a relatively broad scope for these for the living lab. Food waste, construction or built environment, they're really broad, and you don't have to address everything, as long as you explain very well why you are focusing on one specific problem, how big is that, and how your solution addresses that problem. So if your solution is focused on orange peels or coffee food scraps, that's absolutely fine, as long as you explain very well how big is the problem of orange peel in the city of Casey, and how your solution addresses that through your service or product. So don't feel like you need to tackle and transform Casey in a circular economy in 6 months. As long as you're clear in that problem solution writing, you will have an effective presentation. Also, in addressing problem and solution, make sure that you think of how are you going to test and validate the success of your trial, right? The point of the Living Lab is to have a platform where you can get into, where you can present around the community and have that testing and validation of your solution. So make sure that you think about what are the measurements that you want to put in place to assess the success of your initiative. And finally, make sure before you start to write to review in detail the assessment criteria that you find on the full grant document, and you also find on the form on SmartyGrants. Make sure that you address community desirability, project viability and feasibility, as well as partnership and innovation. Keep these in mind while you write your proposal, because if you're able to bring your project back to these criteria, it will make it easier for the assessors to understand the connection between your solution and the criteria that they're looking for when they evaluate the merit. Also, remember that when you register on SmartyGrants, you are allowed to preview the form, and that's what I'm going to do in 1 second. Just make sure that you review all the information that you need to submit, so you understand how long is that going to take, if you have everything that you need, if you're able to address those assessment criteria, or if this is not suitable for you. Then when you write your project, less is more. Just make sure that you write in a clear, concise manner, answer questions in a comprehensive way. They don't have to be long. They just need to make you just need to make sure that it's that they're clearly addressing the question. Leverage some websites or plugins like Grammarly. They can really help you to correct the grammar, improve the clarity of your sentences, and overall give you a better result, a more understandable result for the assessors to read. And also assume that the assessors are not expert in your field. When you're writing something around specific technology that you're developing and waste recovery, for example, the assessors might not be industry expert in that. So make sure that you write in a clear way that also explains the concepts in a way that anyone that is not an expert, that is not doesn't have the level of expertise that you have in your field, is able to understand. And a good way to do that is just to find someone external to review your application before you submit it. So someone that doesn't have the same background expertise that you have, if someone external is able to read it and understand it, it will be understandable for the assessment panel. Then make sure that you don't wait until the last minute. We cannot accept late submissions as the grant closes at 5 p.m. on the 31st, and we cannot accept anything else submitted after that. You will need to address the questions primarily through the form. So you will have the opportunity to upload some attachments. However, most of your content will need to be written on the form, on the different sections on the form. The attachment is just a plus. So please don't address the questions through documents, decks, PDFs, or anything else. Those are the plus, but everything, we need to be able to see everything and all the information needed to address the assessment criteria on the form. Quick overview before we get into the SmartyGrants. This is what happens next in terms of selection process. Once the 31st of August, 5 p.m. has passed, we will look into eligibility. There will be a step of due diligence and an assessment in terms of eligibility of the applications. We will then move to the merit assessment. As Adam said, we are not part of the panel, but the panel will be given the assessment criteria, and that's what they're going to use to assess the merit of the applicants. We might reach out if we need clarification, so make sure that you add the best context in your application so that we can reach out to you if we have any question or need to clarify anything about your application. This is going to be around mid-September. At the end of September, on the 29th of September, we will have a pitch night with the shortlisted applicants. This is where the unsuccessful applicants will be informed and the shortlisted ones will come with us and present their ideas in the community. You might see that pitch night was planned for the 19th of September. The date has changed to the 29th of September, and this will be an in-person event at the Old Cheese Factory in Berwick. Once we gather some feedback from community, we will move back to the panel. There will be an internal final assessment of the finalist, and we will notify the successful applicants via email around mid-October. At that point, that's where the due diligence, funding agreement, process initiation will take place. As we said before, this might be different. This will vary based on your project and the complexity. We will discuss the dates. There will be some discussions, and the funding agreement process might take 2 to 3 weeks, but it might take longer based on your project. Now let's move to the application form. That is the last step of our session today. And I will show you the application form in the preview mode. So this is the mode that you can also activate once you register for your account. And again, I strongly recommend you do that because there we go. Can you see the preview, Adam? Can you give me a thumb up? Awesome. So I am not logged in at the moment, but you will be able to create your own account, and you will be able to preview this document. I'm gonna zoom in as much as possible. And as you can see from the preview, you are able to see all the different sections. When you start your application, if you don't fill out all the required fields, you won't be able to move to the next page. So looking at the form with the preview mode gives you the chance to see everything that is needed from you in the application, all the information that you need to gather before you actually start to submit any information in the form. So these are all the different sections, and we'll run through them one by one. Again, feel free to pop some questions in the chat. I might divide this section into the viability, desirability, and feasibility and partnerships. That are the 4 key area of the assessment criteria. Adam, feel free to stop me if there's anything that you think should be, if there's any feedback or question or something that should be discussed now. If not, we'll keep maybe 10 minutes at the end of the session for all the questions related to the form.
I think that makes sense. I think that, as you can see in the application form, it validates what we're saying around that problem and solution fit through those key dimensions of, is it desirable? Does that actually solve a problem for community? And that's where we will engage with community for community engagement through pitch nights and others. So that's that component. The viability piece is obviously within your project. Is it viable to operate? Is it viable to run? Is it really a project that we think we could deliver on? So have that part of your consideration. And is it also feasible? Is it, you know, if a submission comes in and says, all right, well, we want to launch rocket ships to Mars or create holographic solutions, and do we really think that's a feasible solution for us to put into the community at this stage? And then, as you can see, you know, the partnerships and innovation potential. And some of these are very difficult. We acknowledge that these are very difficult because we're not specifying, but that's part of the, I guess, the beauty of this this platform being a living lab, is to provide the flexibility to co-create this stuff. So again, we're here to support. Just to reiterate, we can't give specific advice. All we can say is think about those considerations and really think about who you might partner with. And yes, there was a question around applications. Just to be clear, if you're applying with multiple parties and you're the lead, make sure that you have that letter of support and acknowledgement from those parties, so that we know that it's a valid partnership submission. That is an important part around the credibility and the confidence of a selection group being able to assess this on merit through the application process.
Indeed. So remind me these things when we get to the different sections, because we design this form and I might miss some bits and pieces. So maybe yeah, let me know if I missed anything at in these key sections that you think is essential to flag, to just make sure that we give you know, comprehensive information on what is needed. So the first step is the pre-application checklist. So this is just to check your eligibility, making sure that you're a registered business or a legal entity. Just to let you know, you don't have to be registered for more than 2 years. This is not an eligibility criteria. So you will be able to go through these sections regardless of how young your organization is. This is not an eligibility criteria anymore. So this is just to, again, check through different basic elements of the application, including pretty obvious the fact that your project needs to take place in the city of Casey, has to be completed within 6 months, and as we said, commence a month from the formal approval, from the contract signing, basically. So that's the basic eligibility that we'll go through once all the applications have closed. At this point, the second page is mostly about just general organization details, your name, business name, address, and so forth. Brief description of what your organization does, and size of your organization, ABN. These are pretty straightforward, basic information about you. Remember that we need a contact person, so make sure that the contact person is the best contact person. Please don't choose someone that works 1 day a week, or because we might have some time-sensitive questions for you. We might need to ask for clarification. At the assessment phase, judges, assessors might have some questions for you, so we need to make sure that we can reach out to you. So put the best contact here, making sure that we can reach out to you. Here we have some due diligence. The basic requirement around public liability is 10 million. So that's for your public liability, just basic insurance cover. And if you don't have it, you can just tell us why you don't have it, and that's absolutely okay, as long as you are willing to obtain it if you are successful in the application, because you will need it if you are successful and will run the trial with us for 6 months. Professional indemnity insurance, we're looking at 5 million here. It will be required if you provide professional advice. If you don't have it, you can just explain why, and if you are willing to obtain it if required, if you are successful. Work cover, and if you have any partners involved, just agree that you will obtain a working with children check if it's required. This is basic due diligence. This is where we get to the project summary. So this section, we will look for the alignment with the objectives of the Living Lab. And this is where you will find that question that we discussed before through the resources. So which challenge can be more than one do you want to address? You can put one, you can put all three of them, it's up to you. And here you will see what are the circular economy business models that best describe the focus of your project. So this is where I recommend you to go back to that board that we looked at before and really think of your project. You can check more than one box in this case. Just think of which one of these models best align with your proposed solution, and give a brief summary of the proposed solution that you want to trial. So be mindful again of the word limitation. Sometimes you will have 200, 300. So make sure that you write the paragraph and do the word counting. This is where we want to know, again, what is the solution that you're proposing the trial, and what is the scope? So you don't have to solve all the food waste problem of the city of Casey, but if you decide that your scope is food scraps from the cafes, fantastic. Just make sure that you write what is included, and make sure that you say, well, I'm not going to address waste from food waste from farms, or I'm not going to address food waste in the manufacturing and packaging, right? So as long as you're clear with the scope, it's absolutely fine. That's what Adam was saying before about just being really clear in the link between the problem and the scope of the solution and what you're trying to address. First chunk of the assessment criteria, number one, is community desirability. And these are the sub elements that the assessment panel will look at. So we need to make sure that your solution will take place in the city of Casey. And here is where you describe very well the project that you're addressing. As Adam said before, as long as this is clear, it will be a successful application. Include any data and research that you've done so we understand the scale of the problem that you're trying to solve. And again, going back to those resources that I shared with you on the mural board, the circular economy in the built environment and food, those type of reports can really help you to address the level, the impact of what you are trying to solve. So if we find out that the amount of food scraps produced by the cafes in the city of Casey or in Victoria is X tons, it will be easier for us to understand how big is the problem that you're trying to tackle. And it will be easier for us to then move to how your project addresses that challenge statement and understand the connection between the problem and the solution that you are proposing. As we said before, it's really important that you tell us how you're going to measure your trial, because we don't expect you to solve everything, but innovation is about being very specific and be able to measure the impact of what you're doing, particularly when your project will run in 6 months, that it's not a lot of time. So make sure that you think about what are the metrics, how am I going to measure success, and tell us what these metrics are. You can upload here any community documentation that you have to support your proposal. It's not mandatory. It's not something that you must have. But if you have any petitions, letters from local organization that show that you're meeting a community need, you're more than welcome to upload it here, and that would help us evaluate how much the community is in need of your solution. Moving on to project viability, this is where we get, as Adam said before, we get to the budgeting and see how realistic the use of the funding will be. This is where you will check, you will tick the category of funding that you're applying for. Remember that you can ask for up to 20K, where no financial contribution is required from you, or 20,001 to 50,000. This is where the match co-funding is required. Or you can also ask for in-kind support only. For example, as we said before, I want access to the reception at Banjo Place, where I'm going to put my recycling station and test it for 6 months. If you're asking for financial, in addition to in-kind, check the first or the second one. So check the one that matches the type of funding, financial support that you're looking for, and you will be able to add in-kind support as an additional resource later, like down on this page. So what we're looking for, it's very clear, will be very clearly highlighted in the tab. We create an example here with your expenditure item and what you are requesting. So this is an example, and down here you have this tab that will create automatically the sum of what you're doing, so you can check as you go. What we want you to write are the expenditure items. So what are the key expenses that you have? Your project might be very straightforward, or within your project, you might have a part of research, a part of engagement. You can have maybe some technical feasibility study. You can have some prototyping. You can have a variety of activities. So just make sure that you divide them into these expenditure items. And on the first column, you will put the request. So how much you are asking as a council contribution through the grant, excluding GST. In the second column, you will put your cash contribution, if any. In the third column, you will put the in-kind contribution, and go back to that link that I shared before to find out more about in-kind contributions. Once you've completed the tab with your budget, the total will be calculated down here automatically. As well as the budget. So as you can see, this is all automatically calculated. You only need to complete the tab, and all these section will be completed automatically. And down here, that's your in-kind request. So if you need $20,000 as well as access to a council facility, for example, to run your trial, this is where you're going to write what kind of in-kind contribution you require from us. In terms of funding, the panel might look through your budget and decide that they will fund you, but they might partially fund your project. So that means that you might be contacted, and you might be told that your project will be funded, but some expenditure items will not. So it's up to you here to decide whether you're happy to do that. So you can decide, if the panel decides to recommend part of the funding to be approved, so that changes your budget. Are you still happy to move forward? This is your decision. And if you decide that you're happy to move forward, you can highlight here what type of changes you would make, if any. This is a conversation that we can have later on in case you are shortlisted, you're selected. However, I would recommend you to just think whether this is something that you are open to discuss or not. Project feasibility. This is where we're looking at your project plan. It doesn't have to be an extremely complex statement of work, but this is where we need to make sure that we have at least the key milestones, the deliverables, and the time frame in which you're going to deliver your project. As we said, there are probably different activities that you're going to run in 6 months. So if your project is made of different phases, a research phase, a co-design phase, a prototyping phase, and a trial and testing and reporting, divide these into key milestones and tell us for each of these stages, what is the output? What are you delivering? and how long is that going to take? So we have an idea of whether you are trying to send a rocket to Mars, or whether you are clearly outlining, a statement of work that is realistic to be achieved in what is understandably not a long period of time, because it's only 6 months. If you want to be more detailed in the project plan, this is the essential that you need to complete, but you can also add some attachments where you can add some more details of your project plan and what you want to do. And finally here, we're also asking you what are the channels that you will use to communicate your project, as well as are there any risks that you're identifying in running this initiative. The fact that you have risk doesn't mean that the likelihood of being selected will decrease. Having a realistic risk assessment plan is just part of good project management, and as long as those risks are highlighted and there's a mitigation plan or some management plan in place, it will be absolutely fine as long as they are well communicated. And we know that these might change as you start with the project, but it's good that just to make sure that you communicate that you've taken into account various risks and dependencies that, again, are inevitable for every project. Then we will ask you about capability to deliver. So this is not about your project, it's more about who is delivering the project. So you can describe your project team and why you think you are in a position to deliver the project. So this is where you can say, me and my team of XYZ number of people have 10 years experience in this specific field. And this is where we understand that you have the expertise and the knowledge to deliver what you are planning to deliver through that statement of work. There's a question about management of data. This is not, this will not apply to everyone, but if you have any technology, any data management, we need to make sure that privacy is taken into account. So this is just a question to make sure that privacy is managed should you had to manage private information. And this is the last section, partnerships and innovation potential. This is where, as Adam said before, you will flag whether you are submitting these on your own or as part of a collaborative partnerships that we strongly encourage. So here is where you are going to talk about how your solution is innovative, why it hasn't done before, why is it innovative, what type of data and insights you might be using, and how you're going to measure the success and inform the solution in a data-based way. Finally, partnering organizations, these will only appear if you select a yes in the collaborative partnership question. So if you had a partner organization, this is where you will put the name of your partner, what is their type of organization. You testify that they meet the eligibility criteria. More due diligence will be done if there are more than one partners. And as Adam said before, if you have any supporting letters from partners, even, it can be like a very short letter that says, I am company XYZ, I will contribute to the trial of company ABC, should it be successful, and I will contribute in this specific way to the success of the project. So it doesn't have to be, these will help strengthen the partnership aspect of your application. Finally, here is where we just ask you a quick feedback. So how did you hear about the grant? And just to making sure that you're not receiving or you are not in the middle of another grant acquittal with the city of Casey. So you will have to flag whether you have any other active grant happening with the city of Casey. final declaration, and there is the end of the form. So I understand there's a lot, but again, less is more. The important thing is that it's targeted and that it addresses the community desirability, how much your solution is meeting a need and aligns with the circular economy and the challenges, the project viability, and a thorough budgeting in that section, as well as the project feasibility, just making sure that you are clear in the type of activities and outputs, and in the type of deliverables that your project focuses on, and how you're going to measure the success of your 6 months trial. Finally, the partnership and innovation potential. It's not a must, but again, it's beneficial to have partnerships already as part of your application. If that doesn't happen, that's okay. It doesn't exclude you from submitting. So that was it. That is it for me, Adam. If you want to, is there anything that you wanted to discuss in these last few minutes that we have? Any question, any burning question that we want to discuss?
Sorry, Nikki. No, I think that was a good comprehensive coverage. I guess certainly if there's any other questions, I think I've responded. I've just been looking through and responding to the questions there, and there was nothing really, I guess, that we needed to take away at this stage. Of course, please reach out if you have other questions. We'll continue to circulate them back out to the group. And just to reiterate that the responses have to be generally nature in terms of what the selection criteria is, what the City of Casey is looking for, what a living lab is about, concepts and context around circular economies, those things, as much as, but again, we just want to reiterate, we can't be specific in saying you should do this in your application or you should solve this problem, because then we get into a very instructive environment, which is what this is not about. So I just wanted to look, if there's no other questions, I just wanted to thank everyone for their time today. I think, Nikki, that was a great job. It was well organised. It was very thorough. We've sent links around. So there is a link to the guidelines. There is also a link. Nikki's just put in a great link to the Open Data platform. It's an amazing resource. Have a look at that. Again, if you go back to the criteria, anybody utilising open data, partnerships, a really strong demonstration of desirability, viability, feasibility, a really clear problem statement, and a really clear way that you're going to solve that with your partners, with your funding guidelines. That tells us that it's a very well considered, sophisticated application. I'd love to say we can give it to everybody. There is a bit of a competitive element to this. So even great presentation applications may not be successful. And I just want to wish everyone the best. It's a really exciting project for us to be working on. And if there are no other questions, I just wanted to wish everyone all the very best. Be healthy and be safe. But we'll hang around for the next minute or so if anyone wants to put anything into the chat box while we wait.
Absolutely, and the our email address is smartcity@casey.vic.gov.au. I didn't share that in the I didn't put that in the presentation deck, so I guess that's a good one that I might just pop in the chat just in case you need to reach out. We will do our best to answer your questions. We don't have all the answers, so be patient with us. We usually try to reply within 1 or 2 working days. If the questions are specific and we need to reach out to the grants team, they might take a couple of extra days. So again, another reason to make sure that your application, that you don't wait until the last minute to go through the form, to go through the question, to understand what is required of you. Because if you send us questions on the 30th of August, chances are that we won't be able to get back to you on time, and you won't be able to implement those, those changes into your project and submit on time. So really important that you start to tackle all these different aspects of the application now. For small application and small projects, don't feel overwhelmed by the length of the form. Obviously, we need to take into account a variety of aspects in the applications, but it doesn't have to be a really wordy, lengthy answer. As long as you address what you are trying to propose, what the question asks, it will be absolutely fine.
I'll just also, let me take that question around one-on-ones on notice. I think we're trying to create those forums like the network sessions and other sessions. So stay tuned. We'll publish something there. We just need to, again, be mindful that, one-on-one sessions might be problematic through the governance process of this. So if you can, let me take that on notice, and I'll come back to the complete group. There might be some other constructs that we can put together that stimulates more discussion and co-creation and collaboration for those groups that want to invest. And that platform might be a more appropriate way for that engagement where we open it up for that type of thing. But, appreciate the questions. No, there's that's the idea of these sessions is all questions are on the table. If we can't do it, we'll let you know very quickly. If we think there might be another way to engage to get more of that information out that enables you to think and consider how you might do that, we just need to do that in a fair and balanced way. And so I'll just I'll take that on notice, and we will respond shortly. Yeah,
you can reach out to the grants team as well. It's been very useful in these process. Well, good luck, everyone. Thank you so much for joining in. I will leave you on the dot. Thank you for coming. It's such a, we know it's a very long session, but hopefully that answered a lot of the doubts and questions. And we're looking forward to seeing your application and your great projects through the Circular Economy Living Lab. Thank you very much, everyone. Thanks, Adam.
Thanks, Nikki. Well done.